Welcome back to my episodes on the megalithic Osirion. So in the first episode we looked at what the archaeologists think and basically the look and the feel of this amazing site. And in this episode we're going to look at some of the independent researchers and what they think about this site. And I'm going to start with one of the bigger ones, which is Ancient Architects, because it also gives a really good introduction.
Interpreted as a subterranean part of the temple complex of 19th dynasty king Sety I, Egyptologists say it was built around 1290 BC, and that it is likely it was never completed.
In the clips from Brien Fraser, which we'll be looking at shortly, there is an explanation of why the archaeologists think that it was Sety, but why it's probably not. But hey, that's just my little bias creeping in, but it'll be explained a bit more further on.
The Osirion was located deep underground, and the centrepiece of the structure is the so-called Central Hall, a true marvel of engineering. It is rectangular in shape, with the walls and central island made of limestone and sandstone. The 10 large pillars, their cross beams and the roofing stones were all made of granite. A moat surrounds the central island, and there is no access to the 17 perimeter recesses or cells, and to get onto the central island you need to get across the moat.
Ancient architects always give an excellent explanation of every site they come to, so that's why I felt that they're the best ones to start with. But what he mentioned just now was the moat, and so I've just added a photo of this moat, and you'll see it's this icky green colour, and yet it is listed as being potable, which means you can drink it. So, I didn't fancy that. And he then goes on to say,
the island, which contains the 10 enormous granite pillars, also has 2 staircases that descend into the moat on the east and western sides.
The really old photos are the best way to see these staircases because it's the old photos where they've actually been able to take the picture while they had got the water out. And that was quite a massive job, and they didn't get it all the way out, as you can see from that photo, but they got it out enough so that they could get a better feel for what the staircase looks like.
There are also 2 recesses sunk into the centre of it, one rectangular and one square.
I believe I know what was in both of those spots, but we'll come to that in the next episode.
A seismic survey showed that the actual foundations are 15 metres deep. That's 49.2 feet.
If you look at this diagram, you'll see where the steps end, and that's how far they got to taking the water out. But obviously it goes much, much deeper than that.
Interestingly, the seismic equipment also recorded voids or cavities inside the central island.
Basically what that means is this box in the middle here, they believe has some, let's say, rooms in it, which they would very much like to get into.
James Westerman discovered a rather unusual feature on the north side of the square recess on the island. There appears to be an angled hole which follows a true north direction. It penetrates 2 blocks, is clearly man-made and is over 1 metre long.
This is what's really exciting for me because this is the strongest indicator for me that what I think this place is actually what it probably was. But once again, I will leave that until later. This next bit that he's going to describe is something that when I was there, I immediately spotted that the place had been completely sealed up, and when I asked the Egyptologist about it, he said, yes, I was completely right. They had to break in to get to this part of the Osirion. But how did they know it was there?
By breaking through the middle cell on the eastern wall of the central hall, you enter what is known as the sarcophagus room. This crude entrance is the only way in or out, apart from one treasure hunter's tunnel in the northern end of the eastern wall. What is most interesting about this chamber is that scholars believe that the room itself is one enormous sarcophagus. There is no original entrance, and it is therefore safe to assume that it was never meant to have one.
One of the other independent researchers that we're going to look at makes some very, very interesting observations about this part of the Osirion, but we'll come to that shortly. But you can see here there are a lot of ancient Egyptian inscriptions on these walls. So does that mean that the dynastic Egyptians found this part of the Osirion before they found the rest of it? That's something that we'll come to later on.
Frankfurt believed that the oblong recess on the island was to house the symbolic sarcophagus of Osiris, and the square one was built for a shrine, possibly holding symbolic canopic jars.
There's lots more interesting stuff on the video from ancient architects, but I'm just sticking with a few clips that are pertinent to the information that we're collecting at the moment. And so we'll move on to the next independent researcher. But I think it's safe to say that ancient architects is consistent with what the archaeologists are saying about the site. And they believe that the Osirion is for symbolic religious purposes. So I hope I got that summary right. But let's move on now to Brien Fraser. The actual on-site video footage from his channel is, in my opinion, the best. It really takes you for a good close look. So I do suggest, once again, you go to their channel and you have a good look at it, because it's really good. Mind you, I know I said that about ancient architects as well, but hey, I've picked on the best of the independent researchers, so you would expect that I would be saying that sort of thing about them. But here's where it gets interesting, because here's where they explain why the archaeologists think that this site was Sety I.
Here in the Osirion, as we're coming down in here, they are attributing this to Sety I as well, but he built this. But why they're attributing it to Sety I was there was a dovetail joint up in the corner of the granite, and underneath the side of the dovetail joint had Sety I's cartouche in it. This is Sety I's temple, just right back here. I think that when he came in here to build his temple, he found these and were afraid they were going to start falling in, and put the dovetail joint up there. I think he found this, and as we're coming from south across...
As I said before, best footage. I mean, look at the detail you get to see in this footage. You get to see all the places where those little tiny stones exist. You get to see the detail of the inset for each of the doorways into the small rooms. It is definitely the best footage. He puts it all into one sentence, and I'm just going to let him say it.
So what's the point in me saying anything? Just look.
One of the reasons I didn't get very good footage of it was that I was so in the moment with it that I just only took a few clips of video and a few photos because I was so amazingly stunned by what I saw and felt when I went to this location.
To be honest, I've got nothing to say because the site is speaking for itself. What's interesting in here is this lintel, which is a cream color. Again, I think this is a type of quartzite, not just a local sandstone, and it's in each room as far as I remember. Again, that really interesting golden colored, I think quartzite, not sandstone. And some curious protrusions like what we see in Peru and also at the Menkaure pyramid in Egypt. So the building is perfectly bilaterally symmetrical. and the strange depressions like we see at Sacsayhuaman in Peru. And then you see the small stones used as filler. Probably was a flaw in the original stone, and so they had to fit these small pieces in, but they fit super tight. Hieroglyphs from the dynastic time period. But obviously this is pre-dynastic masterpiece that was built on purpose underground, and then when Sety I found it, he built his building next to it.
Janna James has some great observations to add to the collection that we've already made from the other independent researchers and, of course, the archaeologists. So here are some of her clips, and I love the way it's sprinkled with humour.
What's interesting about the Temple of Sety is that it's on the wonk. It's got a sort of right angle. It makes like an L shape, which is very unusual in its design. And what is also unusual is at the end of where the temple should, in theory, continue on, you are hit with a second temple that is not connected to the Temple of Sety. So the Osirion and the Temple of Sety are two completely separate sites.
She goes on to explain this debate.
So one argument is that the reason why the temple above ground is in an L shape is because when they were building the temple, they hit this even older ancient temple, and that could be one of the reasons why they decided to build it in an L shape.
Hey, look who we've spotted there. It's NEXT. Oh, but I have deviated. No, please continue.
Or they did it on purpose. They wanted this temple to be absolutely as close as possible to an even ancient structure. And so they deliberately built it carefully around what was already there.
Jahannah, in her video, gives an absolutely fantastic explanation of what the process was that the archaeologists have been through. Who dug what, where, when, what they found. So go to her channel, find out what she said about that, because it really, really is good. So I won't include those clips. You'll have to go find those for yourself. But I am going to add the clip that she's done explaining this.
And you can see that there is like a sort of middle island, which is sandstone, and then huge single cut, one big old piece granite block pillars. So we've got granite blocks. What's missing today is the roof, which also would have been made by these huge megalithic granite blocks. Sandstone base and sandstone sort of side walls. And then the actual enclosure is limestone.
These are the more boring aspects of looking at the Osirion. And yet Jahannah manages to make it seem all very, very interesting.
I did not realise just how deep the Osirion goes. This is going to blow your mind. So in this diagram, see here, you've got a little person and you've got the huge granite blocks, and that is the current floor level that you can walk around today when you visit. But the inner island, which has steps going down into the water, the inner island measures with seismic technology, they have calculated it to be 15 metres. 15 metres. That is a 5-storey building.
You're probably thinking to yourself, we've already heard all that from the first episode when we talked about what the archaeologists found. So why are we playing this again? Well, we're playing it again because when Jahannah talks about it, she talks about it with so much enthusiasm that you actually do listen and you take it in. So that's why we're playing it again.
Now, the seismic tests showed something else really exciting. It is not one solid block going down, that there is a hollow chamber in there. Who knows what the heck's inside there?
I'm going to answer this question because I've already kind of told you in the first episode, but it's water. What's in there is water and the mechanisms for maintaining that water to the desired level. And I'll explain why in my final episode. So I don't want to give away too much at this stage. Let's get back to Jahannah.
So it's 15 metres deep, 12.5 metres wide, and 21.8 metres long. This is freaking huge.
No one can describe how large this megalithic site is better than Jahannah.
This is freaking huge. So the water level that it is at today is the lowest level that they were able to get with modern machinery. Not only that, there is not a solid foundation to the Osirion. The Osirion is built on water saturated sand. Just how far you have to go down before you would hit bedrock, and it's 900 meters.
I'm not sure I have to point this out, but it's one gigantic slab popped into sand. So just think about that. One gigantic slab, and it's surrounded by blocks of gigantic stone. But it's that one big gigantic stone that you need to think about. And there's quite a few more excellent points that she makes that aren't made in some of the other videos. So I'll just pop them all together for completeness.
There is a heat source somewhere under the Osirion that is heating the water. You would need this amount of space to excavate out and dig out the rock and the sand and everything needed. Looking at the angle to build this site, it's almost impossible for the site to have been built after or alongside the Sety temple. Was it in fact a legacy structure that has been left from a previous civilization? Is it an early 1st, 2nd, 3rd dynasty Egyptian structure? The 19th dynasty built a structure basically almost on top of it. Did they discover it then, or did they always know it was there and that's why they put their site on top of the old site? There are arguments that sway, even though architecturally it's a completely different style.
Jahannah doesn't explicitly give an opinion on this, but it certainly looks like she's leaning towards it being a lot older than a Sety temple. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and we've only done 3 of the independent researchers, so in the next episode we'll look at some more of them. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks, bye.